Now, Conor's in a different country, obviously, and he's said that he's out of the USADA testing pool.
You get out of the testing pool, and if you want to get back in to go fight, you have to declare anything you took. You have to be in the testing pool for 6 months. You get pulled from the rankings. Like, you're out. But here's the catch. They didn't remove him from the rankings.
You think you are this established thing, no one can mess with our tradition, and then next thing you know, you got a couple of YouTubers coming in absolutely ransacking the place. And I think Andrew Tate and Jake Paul, like, that's going to be the biggest pay-per-view buy of at least that I could think of. It's probably the best option as far as like getting people to be interested in boxing and celebrity boxing. It's like, does this represent the beginning, or is this going to continue to go on, or is this going to be like kind of the final thing?
So I would actually argue he did not really shake up boxing, at least not yet. Now, he has certainly shaken up some of the ideas around boxing. There's a larger, broader conversation about this sort of YouTube, Instagram, like let's fight culture and what that's done to bring a younger audience to boxing. There is actually some data around that the largest growth of younger audiences among combat sports has chiefly been in boxing in more recent years, which is an interesting thing to consider. But it's actually not boxing he's shaken up. It's actually MMA he's shaken up. And the reason why I say that is because people misunderstand Jake as like, oh, if you like that, you have terrible taste. I'm not here to say what is or isn't what people should like. They should like, life's short and like what you like. But he picked a fight with the MMA industry, right? Here's what he basically realized. He realized he could get good enough to take aging MMA talent at the end, like roughly the end of their career, and he could box their ears off relatively easily, make a lot of money doing it, and can also get those guys paid in an industry where there are some legitimate monopoly concerns around the UFC, right? It's a very differently structured industry than boxing. In fact, he can only go into boxing by virtue of the latitude he has to pursue these opportunities, which he would not really exist in MMA, getting back also some of the other concerns about injury load. And he has picked them off one by one as he escalated up the ladder, constantly going after Dana White, constantly talking about fighter pay, constantly talking about these issues. The trouble he has found himself in is that he actually might be too good for that now. That particular, not like good opponents, but that particular lane in which he was going down. You mentioned the Tate fight might be the biggest. There is a conversation around how big a Nate Diaz boxing fight would be. I tend to think Nate Diaz is a proven draw on pay-per-view, and for that reason,
do you think Nate versus Jake in a boxing match, like, you think that's going to outplay Tate? And
I do.
You do, really?
I mean, you can't ever say it with confidence because Tate is sort of a very polarizing, controversial, and despite being canceled, well-known figure, right? And so for that reason, it's a little bit of a wild card play. But what about
Conor? Where would Conor fit into this then?
Conor would be the biggest. He would be bigger. Yeah. He would be bigger than Diaz. He would be bigger than anybody. I don't know a bigger name than that one, really, unless it was like Mike Tyson or something. But yes, Conor is the biggest name. But what you also have to remember about pay-per-view is like either you can draw on that or you can't. And if you've never done it before, it's very hard to say what a guy could pull to like known wider audiences. Like whose Q rating socially is higher, Tate, Jake Paul, or Nate Diaz? I would say Nate Diaz is the most popular of the three, actually.
Interesting.
Remember, people don't buy fights for quality. Not often. What they buy is for star power. And who's got the highest star power?
Something that Chris had pointed out, if anything, Andrew Tate is kind of like falling stock, and he's never going to be this high again. That's like his inference. So it might as well be a good time to get him now. I think if Jake Paul were to go for someone else now, I mean, if it was Conor, that's the best. I agree with you. I think that's the best case scenario. But if he goes for, Nate Diaz now, and then later, a year, 2 years from now, it's Andrew Tate, it might not be the same Andrew Tate that we all kind of know about.
So, but here's the thing I would caution against in that line of thinking. It's if you're Jake Paul, part of it is obviously to just make money and make a lot of noise, bang the pots and pans, so to speak, right? Like obviously that's a very clear part of it. Look at me, yeah. But the other part is if you beat Andrew Tate, again, I do know that he had some kickboxing. I've not watched a ton of tape on him. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other on his abilities as a fighter. But I've obviously seen everything Nate Diaz has done, and I have sort of an understanding within the MMA world about how much cachet there is. Like if you're Jake, we can debate how competitive the fight is, but if you're Jake and you beat Nate Diaz, there's a lot of value in saying you beat Nate Diaz. You have that W on the resume. I think a lot of folks wouldn't actually know what it means to beat Andrew Tate. Like, what exactly does that? What benefit does that confer?
Wasn't he a kickboxing world champion?
Sort of. Not in the way that you might imagine. He was a world champion. There's a lot of different sanctioning organizations and a lot of different kinds of prestige. The kind he had, again, I genuinely am not trying to knock it. He certainly has done far more than I've ever even attempted. Right. But we're not talking glory level. We're not talking K1 level.
Right,
That's not the level we're talking about here.
Okay. Conor McGregor, to me, is just... He's no matter what stage we're in with Conor McGregor, it's like he cannot stay out of the limelight. What do you think the evolution for him is like? Let's just say he continues down this track. Like, how long does it take for him to become completely irrelevant in MMA?
A while. Fandom, people think fandom is fickle, and it is in the short term. But there is a very silent majority of people for any fan, Conor or Nate or pick any celebrated figure in combat sports. Like, I remember, here's a really weird stat that maybe will blow your minds, but it's always blown my mind. One of the smaller organizations, they're now on Showtime. They've under different ownership. They were on Spike TV. Is called Bellator. Now, Bellator has some very good fighters. It's not equivalent to the UFC, but it's a good organization that does have some really good talent. They had some this past weekend. If I had to ask you who the most popular fighter in Bellator history, and when I say this, I mean by a mile, like not even close. Who's the most popular fighter in Bellator history?
Was Chandler?
Chandler's not even close. Not even close.
Chandler's not even close.
Not even close.
I don't know.
It's Kimbo Slice.
Wow.
Dude, Kimbo Slice is the most popular fighter. Rest in peace. He's the most popular fighter. That guy drew 3 million live viewers on Spike TV for his fight against either Ken Shamrock or Dada 5000. I have to go and double check that part.
Yeah.
But like the other guys they can't even touch 1 million. You know what I mean? Like, we're talking orders of magnitude. And this was after washing out of UFC, that whole weird boxing thing. Obviously, all the Elite XC stuff where he was fighting Seth Petrozelli and it all blew up in his face. We're talking years after that, and he's still pulling millions of people.
Yeah. So,
right?
so basically what you're saying is Conor could come back a decade from now and be like, "Oi, Jake, where's my boxing match?" And everyone would still watch, or...
It's hard to say. I mean, the future's hard to predict in that particular kind of way. And I want to be clear, as much as I'm defending the idea that like passions die hard, and they do, if he suffered like a genuinely terrible loss to someone very good, and very like that would hurt his stock as a pay-per-view star, right? It would really hurt his stock. But over the long term, all the worldwide fans he's built, they're not just going to go away tomorrow. They're not. Yeah,
he's got a serious fan base around him, and this whole thing where I'm not entirely sure about like the whole getting out of the testing pool, and then
I got some ideas on that.
Okay, so let me just like explain from a weightlifting perspective. Like, you can't do that in Olympic sports. Like, you can't just be like, "Hey guys, I'm retiring. Go take a bunch of gear and then come back." Like, you can't do shit like that. They have stipulations to keep people from doing that. Now, Conor's in a different country, obviously. I believe he's living in Ireland.
Yes.
That would be my belief. And he's said that he's out of the USADA testing pool. I don't know what they do with WADA or any of that, but it's a very strange situation. Maybe you can give a little bit more insight on it.
So the basic idea is that Conor has created a bit of a firestorm, and I want to be clear that I actually really support him, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but here's the basic idea. Up to this point, when the UFC's been working with USADA, which is, I think, roughly 2016 on, there were two ways to get out of the testing pool. One is you could, like, legitimately retire, like, "Hey, I really am done, like, I just don't want to do this anymore." You get out of the testing pool, and if you want to get back in to go fight, you have to declare anything you took. You have to be in the testing pool for 6 months. You get pulled from the rankings, like, you're out. Okay, or you get cut from the organization. You can go do whatever you want after that. Those are the two ways. But then something happened weird with Conor after his last fight with Poirier, where he broke. I think he broke, like, maybe even spiral fracture, but he broke it. I think both his tib and his fib. Like the whole shit got broken.
Are they not telling people what exactly happened, or do we know?
We do know No, they haven't been very specific with it, but my understanding is that in his entire shin bone and everything around it broke.
Okay, go on.
So what happened with him was he's also shooting a movie with Jake Gyllenhaal, but the whole point was he got out of the testing pool. But here's the catch. They didn't remove him from the rankings. The only reason people found out about it is because you can go online and you can see who gets tested how many times. And he wasn't tested for like a year, but he was still in the rankings. We've asked USADA for comment, and they don't really tell us anything. It's clearly an exemption. So I don't know how he did this, but he fucking did this. The reason why I feel like it's okay is basically this. I have watched the movie of someone's career several times come and go. I've seen what these guys look like on the other end. They are fucked up. They are fucked up a lot. We're talking ambulatory issues, to say nothing of the brain trauma. Their knees are blown out. Their ankles have been surgically repaired. Their shoulders don't work the same. Their back and necks they look like they've been in car crashes.
Yeah, they just kind of walk around.
I mean, you cannot imagine how much trauma over the course of a 15-year career these guys suffer. It is astronomical. And so, while I understand there is a central tension happening here between what people want to see as drug-free sport integrity, I'm going to tell you that these guys look like they have been in motherfucking car crashes. And I do believe an exemption should be made if this guy has to take growth hormone so that the bones fuse together better so he has a life after fighting. I have to tell you, I really don't have a problem with that, candidly. And also, everyone knows what the is going on. You know the score with him. You take a fight with him, you know what he's been doing. It's not like it's not exactly like he's hiding everything here.
Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that, press here for the full-length episode.